Welcome to Inform New Hampshire. My name is Dean. This is Richie to my right and Pat to my further right. And we are broadcasting on Monday evening, 6:30 p.m. We're actually starting next week a live show Tuesdays at 5 p.m. It's going to be an hour-long show. I hope you'll join us then. And so we are concerned with the direction of our country. And about a year ago, Richie and I got together and decided to start talking about some of the research that we do and the information that we know, which doesn't get reported on mainstream media, which is hidden from the public on purpose, omitted from the news programs, as well as omitted from the educational institutions in our country. So we thought we'd share that information with you. We feel like an informed public is much more powerful in orchestrating our country and running our government than an uninformed public. So that's what we're about. We hope you'll join us in the future. We have a YouTube channel called Inform New Hampshire. Please drop by, click the like button, and subscribe if you will. And we also have a Facebook page also called Inform New Hampshire. So feel free to check us out there. Today we want to do a little bit of a recap of the presidency of Donald Trump and take a look at some of the things that have been accomplished over the first 100 days. Prior to starting the show, though, I want to just once again, as we always do, mention Jerry DeLamus, and I'll allow Richie to share a little bit about Jerry, if he will.
Yeah, I'd like to continue to ask you to support Jerry and Sue financially and in your prayers. And if you have the resources, you want to send some money to help his legal defense, it's freejerrydelemus.com. And I was personally hopeful yesterday that he was going to be sent home. The trial ended for the Bundy group yesterday. I don't know if you people are aware of it. But unfortunately, it was labeled a mistrial. 2 people were found guilty of misdemeanor charges. And I don't know right now, but it looks as if there might be time served since they've been in prison forever. And the retrial is supposed to be scheduled for June 26th or through the 28th. I forget the exact date. So it's still another month and a half away. We got to wait and then go through the trial. So you're looking at a couple more months before we figure out what's going on with our corrupt government. Anyway, please help Jerry and Sue as much as you can. Also, one other thing. There is a rally this Saturday, April 29th, at the Concord State House for Jerry. And I'd appreciate it if whoever can make it come up there and show their support. We need people to let our government know that we're not happy with what's going on.
So that's Saturday, April 29th.
1 to 3 in the afternoon.
1 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday. Join us up there to support Jerry DeLamus. Also, Susan DeLamus, Jerry's wife, who is a former state rep here in New Hampshire, she'll be a guest on our show, and it will be a phone call-in guest. She'll be here on the show May 9th, Tuesday, from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. So feel free to join us then. We're going to have Susan share her story with us. So what else we got? Is that it for?
Well, we'll have a phone number then, too, if people want to call in. I think.
Yeah.
Pretty sure we will. Yeah.
All right. So getting started with the Trump administration has achieved their first 100 days, which is a little bit odd that we talk about the 100 days, but it seems to be a tradition lately for presidents to discuss what happens in their first 100 days. Trump has done so much in his first 100 days that the media just doesn't want to talk about it. And historically, they love to talk about the Democratic president's first 100 days and what they did. And they'll make up stories if they have to, but they love to do that. So anyway, to get started.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Before you get started on this, because I think it's important. Last week was the tax time. You know, taxes were over on Tuesday, 1 week ago. And I understand that there's a lot of unemployed, or there should be a lot of unemployed accountants in the government. Because when Mr. Trump appointed Ben Carson to HUD Secretary, first thing he did was conduct an audit, and they found $520 billion in accounting errors. So if you're looking for an accountant that might be able to get you through the tax loops and everything, there's probably some of them unemployed right now, so you might want to check with HUD.
Well,
I don't know if they'll refer them to you, but hey, you can give it a try.
Well, historically, I thought they rewarded failure there at the government, but maybe they're
no,
maybe they're letting
not
a few of
anymore.
them go. Yeah, could be.
I thought that was noteworthy anyway.
Pat, is there anything you want to start off with here about Trump on the first 100 days? Or
You want to put things in an order of priority as most important and beneficial and earth-shaking?
what, you have that all worked out in your head
No,
already?
because some of them are interrelated, I think.
True, they are.
But I think that the thing we can all be happy for, that's everybody in this room and in the state and in the nation and in the world, is that all of us right now aren't minuscule pieces of carbon floating in the atmosphere or dying from nuclear radiation, because I think that he avoided
Yeah.
a third world war, much like Putin did in the interim leading up to Trump coming into office with the constant push to get into a conflict in Eastern Europe. It's amazing what Trump has done, and it's funny about this. A lot of people don't tend to realize that had the other candidate gotten into office with her record and calling for conflict and everything on the border in Russia and the demonizing of Russia, that I think that having done a profile on her, the Russians looking at her, and they'll do a profile on everybody, right down to your governors and your political people. I think the thing that stands out is Libya, with the murder of Muammar Gaddafi, and her response to that, her public response to that on CBS, showed somebody that entertained some
Psychopath.
private homicidal fantasies that should probably enjoy using the state to put into action. So I think that's a primary thing right there. Is it looks like he bought some time, and at the same time, it looks like right now he's trying to prevent the U.S. economy from collapsing by disassembling Obamacare, which was, in its design, was made to create a massive crisis in the nation. So
Let's go through a few of these things, and then you guys can comment them along the way. Is that all right?
that's fine. Yeah.
According to a new ABC News Washington Post poll, an incredible 96% of those who supported the presidency in November say they'd do it again today. The White House statement continued. The White House has also summed up the president's first 100 days in office with the following: enacted more legislation and signed more executive orders in the first 100 days than any other president in half a century. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that's a good thing. That could be problematic for sure. But enacted 28 pieces of legislation, more than any other president since Truman. Signed 25 executive orders, the most in 100 days for 50 years. Achieved first Supreme Court confirmation in 100 days since 1881. Instituted tough immigration policies that have driven illegal border crossings to a 17-year low. Removed more job-killing regulations through legislation than any president in history. Estimated savings $18 billion annually. Economic optimism has been renewed, with consumer confidence reaching its highest level in 16 years, and ordered the toughest new rules to stop the revolving door between Washington lobbyists and government officials in history. Interesting stuff, huh?
Yeah, it is. It's good about what he's doing. Not that we want to be ruled by executive orders,
Right.
but anything that Obama did was
He's
naturally
undoing.
with executive orders can be undone instantly by Donald Trump. So the tremendous damage that was done, we get on the course of rectifying it pretty quickly without going through a whole congressional process.
Yep. The Associated Press reported on March 3rd that according to the U.S. Department of Labor, unemployment claims dropped 19,000 from 242, dropped by 19,000 from the previous week to the lowest level in 44 years, since March 1973 when Richard Nixon was president.
Another important thing that he did that's huge, that's monumental, is that he's revitalizing and bringing back honor to the United States military, where the Obama administration was disassembling the military and causing a great deal of damage with its rules of engagement. If you study military history, you look at the different commanders, and you look at people like Napoleon Bonaparte, you look at George Patton, and they'll come down to the same principle, that they would rather have somebody lesser trained but with a better morale, lesser armed, would be a more effective individual. And that's what he's done. He's brought respect back. And not only that, now he's doing things for the veterans. A lot of these guys who were just not cared for properly, finally is doing something for them. I think he's done an awful lot, too. So he's reinstituted respect in the military, And he's not going to let them be used the way that they have in the past. And that goes all the way back. It's not just this administration. It's been the whole process since the end of World War II. Well, you watched right in 1945, the last part of 1945, if you watch any of those films, it shows American troops going ashore in the Philippines and that. And it says United Nations troops. And then you watch all of these undeclared no-win wars from Korea through Vietnam. The rules of engagement in Vietnam, they were terrible. I mean, you couldn't attack a SAM missile site until it was fully operational. You couldn't bomb Haiphong Harbor. You had to be 15 miles outside of it. I'll give you one good instance that I learned about a long time ago when I was a youngster in the 80s. I was working on a large construction project, and there was a fellow I worked with, and he was an area superintendent, and he had been at Cam Ranh Bay in Vietnam. And, of course, that fuel tankers would come in with aviation fuel and fuel for the trucks. And these are huge, huge tankers from multinational corporations. You'd recognize the names. And they had hundreds of millions of gallons on there. And when those ships were tied off, and you look at the shipping manifests, they'd be half full. So naturally, he brought up the question, why would you send a ship that's only half full? And the skipper, to his chagrin, said, well, I hate to tell you this, but our first delivery was in Haiphong Harbor. So you have an ally that's supporting North Vietnam with that fuel.
Both sides, yeah.
Everything down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, our troops engaging them and coming, either being wounded or losing their lives. And I think you're going to see an end to that with Donald Trump, that we have these corporate people. He's declared war on the globalists, on a new world order. He has a remarkable speech on that called "Trump Declares War on the New World Order," and it is right out there. So that's one of the great things he's done for the military, because you look at Benghazi and things like this. It's these people have to understand that they're going to be supported 100% and not abandoned. So
Right. They have to be, or they won't.
They have to be.
It will fall apart.
it's serious stuff. Very serious stuff.
Well, I'd like to
That's
see.
a key thing too. You lose your military. As I say, this conference won't take place. It doesn't matter what you do locally in your state legislature. The world is such a dangerous place. You have so many enemies. You need to maintain that military in its traditional sense, where the Constitution is all important. Where you see General Mattis as a Marine, where the Marine Corps stresses that. It's such an important thing. It's key to everything. It really is.
Now, he's increased the budget for the military, and of course, in recent weeks, there's been some things happen that cause a lot of concern for a lot of people that supported Trump. And number one would be the bombing of the air base in Syria, or the chemical base, or whatever it was. And then number two, the GUB bomb in Afghanistan, GBU, whatever it was, the largest bunker-busting bomb, I guess it was. It's a GBU-43 Moab. So those two things, of course, when I heard that, at a gut level, I was like, "Oh, what's going on here?" And
We all did.
Yeah, and it felt like a betrayal in a sense, because I've always considered that the CIA basically set up the ISIS and the Al Qaedas, and they were running through the 7 countries that General Wesley Clark talked about 12 years ago on TV, saying that the U.S. is going to topple these 7 countries, and they all were countries that had their own banking system. They were building wealth. They were growing their country. They're educating their citizens. Freedom was coming up a little bit. Women didn't have to wear the hijab, and they weren't slaves necessarily. So taking out those countries and then sticking in the Muslim Brotherhood or whoever they put in there was a much worse situation that they did. And of course, you commented on Hillary laughing at the murder of Gaddafi.
It was horrific.
On TV, just laughing at it, and what an embarrassment. But so to see this happen, it brought into question. Okay, and of course, a lot of people are spinning it that way. That okay, has he been compromised? Has he turned a corner and decided to go a different direction?
Yeah.
And over time, personally, I looked at, okay, well, really nothing happened with the 59 missiles that he sent to that base.
Right.
There's no reports of death or anything like that. And I'm really not sure about the Afghanistan tunnels, which, by the way, were built by the CIA. So, I don't know.
There's cause for concern, Dean, and I'm concerned about it too. But the thing is, I'm not ready to condemn Trump, because I don't understand, like a lot of Americans don't understand, the implications. And one of the things you sent me is that the White House is having a goddamn civil war, pardon my French. They're having a civil war in there,
Yeah, they are.
inside the White House.
Right.
And we don't know what's going on and who's who.
Right.
I hear this one's a bad guy, this one's a good guy. I don't know these people. None of us in America do. You might hear dribs and drabs about them, but how do you know if it's true?
Well,
You know what I mean?
he can't show his hand because he has
Oh, I
so
know.
many agencies of state that are perverse, that are waiting to sabotage what he's doing. We've never had a president, I can't imagine anybody wanting to be president and stepping in and trying to clean out the whole hornet's nest that he has because it's so multifaceted. All of the problems from the economy to the military to foreign policy to all the spying issues, it's he stepped into something that's it would take enormous courage and savvy to straighten out. So I don't think he can really show, and I think he wants to be unpredictable as opposed to the way things used to be in the past where you let your enemies know when you're coming. But a lot of what you see hinges on his relationship with Putin and what's truly going on, where it's a distinct possibility that both of them are working together to unseat the former financial order, which has been corrupt for so very, very, very long. You know, so if you study,
Centuries, yeah.
if you look at this, if you study the history of the world or Europe from the 19th century on, there was always an effort to isolate Russia. In the 19th century, that was called the Great Game. It was largely driven by the British, who wanted to control their cash cow, which was India. And so you kind of locked Russia out from access to warm water ports, and it continued into the 20th century. You could see them cut off from any banking funds before 1905, and they finally go to war with Japan and lose that. And then the groundwork laid for the Russian Revolution with financial assistance from the West. You read Anthony Sutton's books, and they're just great on this. So we look at Putin now, and people will characterize him as, well, he's a KGB guy, and he's this and that. What would you be if you were born in Russia in the 50s? You'd be in some aspect of that state, for sure. And if you look at him within that institution, he's really considered pretty much an outsider and a guy that wanted to reform things.
Yeah, but for all the past 50 years, Pat, we've been lied to about a lot of countries. Vietnam,
Of course, yeah.
I mean, well, I can't list them all, but Grenada, I mean, so many places.
Well, they have
Iraq,
to-
every place.
They have too. If you can take two outstanding sources from that on recent Russian history, and one would be Stanislav Lunev, Through the Eyes of the Enemy, and the other was Vasily Mitrokhin, who was KGB historian. And those guys will say that it was later on in life when they actually got into files, Lunev, I think, in the Marx Engels Institute, right into Lenin's notes, where all of a sudden he had an epiphany. He began to read this, and he said he was astounded by the absolute sheer magnitude of the planned evil, for the dissolution of nations, what he planned to do. And all of a sudden they changed. We can take somebody like Putin, and looking at how things happened in Russia with the Soviet Union falling apart in '89, nothing's on paper, they're promised all this help, and Gorbachev goes along with this, and then everything falls apart. Then you watch these people come in from the West, largely in banking, and grab all of the assets, all of the factories, all the key resources, and then as the oils develop, all the benefit of that is going outside the country. So he literally was watching Russia raped. And what happens is to get them out of debt once he came to power, it's a long, circuitous route. He got them out of debt by selling gas through the Ukraine, largely, and then threw out any of those banks. And then you watch the attack on him. So it's about who has power and whether it's going to be the traditional unipolar type world dominated by Anglo-American banking elites, or if it's going to be something where you've got multiple, financial interests that can interact between the individual nation states. So I mean, it's somewhat complex, but it's understandable if you sit down and you take your time and you study it. If I can understand it, I'm very much an average guy, then probably anybody can.
It's a lot of time, though.
You're a little bit
To
above
your
average
credit,
there,
you
buddy.
did it, yeah.
Now, do you see Putin as an ally for Trump?
He's a potential
going
ally.
after-
If you look at his speeches where he talks about the West, he says that you're cutting out your own historical roots. And he talks about the deviation from Christianity. He talks about the communists and what they did in his nation. And then you look at the level of traditional religion that he's brought back into Russia, the Orthodox religion, and the hundreds of churches and into the schools, and that would be so far beyond what anybody that was a traditional communist would do. They would never do that. They would have so much as window dressing, but to take the whole population like that and to bring up the younger children like that and embed them in that attitude, it would never happen. But the core central pivot, if you study Solzhenitsyn, for what happened in Russia,
Yeah, that was their first line of attack.
Destruction of religion,
was anti-Christian beyond anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I see him as a great natural ally, particularly to check the power of Russia. I think those financial elites for the longest time used China as the anvil to smash the middle class in most other countries, and now it's starting to change.
Yep.
Well, I got a thing that might help out Trump. It's not something he did, but something he might be doing real soon. They unearthed 2 bodies today in Arkansas. They were both federal, they called them federal government law enforcement. I don't know what, FBI, DEA, CIA, I don't know what they were. It didn't mention that. But these 2 bodies were pretty important in the Clinton investigations.
Oh, boy.
So it looks like they might be going down for this murder.
Oh, yeah, they
the
exhumed Vince Foster's body.
Right.
No,
right?
no, this isn't
No.
Vince Foster.
Okay.
Yeah.
Someone else.
This is 2 law enforcement people, and the way they found it, they were in shallow graves. I guess they didn't say it was a dog, but they said an animal was walking with a skull in its mouth.
Yeah.
They must have dug it up, obviously. They found it, traced the dog's prints back to the thing, and started digging, found 2 bodies.
My other priorities would have been, he prevented what would have been a nuclear war had Hillary Clinton gotten in. That's number 1. Number 2, he's salvaging and resurrecting the United States military. All right, Obama had pushed out some 250 of our best people, and what you see is you're going in the inverse direction now and bringing back people that respect the nation, the Constitution.
Yeah.
And thirdly, I would say, in line with what you just mentioned, was, and people want this, and it is enormous issue, is they want the rule of law reinstituted in the
Absolutely.
nation. And that is coming. You're going to see investigations from everything from Filegate to Benghazi to name something.
That alone.
Yeah, you don't have to go
If
over
you're
the
paying
list. It's just
attention.
about everything. But I know 3 people
huge.
right here that are for the rule of law and that are working hard to try to restore it.
Yeah.
Just right here, 3 of us.
Yeah. Anything on the pedophiles, there's been thousands arrested. You don't hear anything about that at
Yeah, there's
all.
been over
Yeah.
3,000 arrests
Right.
now.
Yeah, and there was an arrest, an indictment by a grand jury in the State Department for a woman within
Claiborne.
Hillary's circle for
Claiborne, yeah.
Yeah.
selling secret information to the Chinese. So
Yeah.
that's going to be most likely for treason. So the message has gone out that this whole thing, this
Selling
parade
out
of
your-
corruption is so massive and it's international. It's going to come to an end, and it's a serious issue, and there's going to be justice. I mean, this Clinton organization is worldwide. It's massive.
Yeah, it is.
It's huge, and it's not the only one. There are other people that have their own. My understanding is John McCain had his own.
Well,
How
so
do you
did the
think-
Bushes. They had the Bushes for way back.
Yeah, the New World Order is just an organized crime ring, but it's a massive, massive one. They control the pedophilia and the child abductions all over the world. They control the drugs.
Yeah.
They have counterfeit money that's called the Federal Reserve note. It's worth a penny now.
Yeah.
Okay? Our silver and gold isn't worth anything because we can't use it,
Right,
even though it's lawfully, what we are supposed to be using.
right.
Everything that should be going in our favor to make our lives better is against us.
Mhm.
And the New World Order, the organized crime ring, and I don't call them elite, I call them inbreds, because that's what they are. Well, that's what they are. I just call a spade, you know? They're, I don't want to
I'm only thinking about the history of European aristocratic families. You're going to do a program on that sometime, and you'll.
Yeah.
Some of it's pretty
It's true.
troubling. But
Yeah, it's true.
the question I would bring up is when you look at this stuff, you look at these guys that are selling out and selling and committing treason and selling their soul. What are the reasons they do it for? Can you put them in a hierarchy, in a structure?
Money.
That's the number one reason. If you look at the FBI or you look at the KGB, or FSB now, if they put things in an order of priority, money is always the number one reason. They'll get
Power
there with
right
money.
behind it, yeah.
Well, if money is the first, then the second is it's ideology. You get people that are brainwashed,
Ideologues.
and they'll go along and they'll sell out their own system for something else. The third reason, because I've done a study on this, is revenge. They feel as though they've been slighted within the system for some reason, so to get back at that system and the damage to them, they'll sell out to the enemy. And the
And
last reason,
Stupidity, because they don't know what they're doing to their country.
it can be these can be interrelated, but the last reason is largely ego.
Yeah.
Get somebody that needs to be patted on the back constantly and needs
Well,
to
they
be
want to be
massaged.
part of the club.
They can be manipulated. So
Narcissistic
money, ideology,
personalities, yeah.
revenge, and then ego. And I'm sure Washington itself is just full of it from top to bottom.
Yeah, look at the people we elect every year, unfortunately. They're all narcissistic personalities, and egomaniacs. It's just crazy.
Sociopaths.
Yeah.
So proceeding with Trump and looking at his report card now. What about the economy? What's he done?
He's done a lot. He's reduced a lot of regulation. He's met with executives and CEOs of a multitude of companies. He's reset the playing ground so
Right.
it's more fair for the country. He's dealing with the international trade policies. He dumped TPP. He dumped something else I can't remember, but he's probably going to renegotiate or pull out of NAFTA. And he's done a lot of deregulation that allows companies to compete and to get into the marketplace. He's restoring the coal industry, which Obama was shutting down strategically.
Right.
So there's a number. I mean, there's
Yeah,
a
he
lot
stopped
of.
the BLM, supposedly, too, by
Yep.
telling them they can't, their own mission statement, if you want to call it that. He said, you're not going to be using this anymore, forget it, stop it. Because they were acting crazy, obviously. Harry Reid and company and his corrupt little son, piece of garbage, bar attorney. Call it what it is. They sold 56 farmers out of Nevada there, the Bundy situation. That's how the whole thing got started.
Yeah.
So they can put the Chinese in there to start a solar farm.
Yeah.
Taking Americans off their own property to give it to the Chinese. I mean, where do we live?
Yeah.
Where do we live today?
In a criminal mafioso
You
environment.
ain't kidding.
So we only have about a minute left.
He's cut the corporate tax rate from
Yep.
35% to 15%. Then he's telling companies that want to sell within the United States, you need to build here, manufacture here, and sell Americans.
And supply
If you-
here.
If you look at the stock market, in the past, a lot of it was just camouflage. You know, you had the Fed giving 85 billion, 90 billion a month to select banks,
Yeah.
to their friends, and they were making it look as though you had a healthy stock market. Now you've got some real people investing money in the stock market because they see somebody they trust, they can see the potential for growth, how everything is going to swing back this way. So he's revitalizing the nation. He's done an astronomical job.
Yeah, yes.
And the people in this country should get down on their hands and knees and pray that this guy just keeps on
To
going.
Trump, good job. Proud of you.
Oh, baby, come on.
So,
All right.
I just
So-
wanted to say real quick,
Go
and
ahead.
you can wrap it up. 5 to 6 next week, next Tuesday, May 2nd. Dick Marple is our guest. I'd love to tell you to call in, but I don't know.
86-year-old state rep coming to talk about his confrontation
the
with the
courts.
courts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week on our live program for an hour long. Thank you. Have
Thanks
a great
for
day.
joining. Yep.